Hey everyone, welcome back to Clean Code with Jason, where we break down one of the most impactful books in software craftsmanship, one chapter at a time. Today, we are jumping into chapter 3 called functions. So, if you think long function names are fine or that do stuff function name is a great function name, stay tuned. Chapter 3 teaches how functions should be small, focused, and intention revealing. Uncle Bob lays down the commandments of function writing, helping us turn clumsy code into readable, reusable pieces of logic. So the key concept covers are all these. So the main thing is function should be small, really small. Do one thing at a time. Should be descriptive names, one level of abstraction per function, fewer arguments, no side effects, use exceptions as returns in case any error code occurs. So let's take a look at the first point. Function should be small. Now, if you take a look at this function, if you're going to take this example, this is a bad function because here we are expecting to do fetch, validate, update db and send email all in one function. So we should not do that. Perhaps if we can make a function like this, it means we are having a validated variable which is calling in another function of validate user, and we are again calling in another function save to db, and then again we are sending another email. So instead of writing all the logic in the same function, we need to segregate them into sub functions where we can call it here. So this is an example of good function. Now what we can get from here is each function should do only one clear isolated task. So now that's the first part. Now let's take a look at do one thing at a time. Now do one thing, only one thing only. So let's take a look at an example like this. Generate report. We are cleaning, we are analyzing, and we return. So this generate report is all about analyzing and working with some data to generate some report. So here we are not doing any other function name like save to db. So save to db, that kind of function name we are not doing. So we should not do these functions. Bad side effect. So this is a bad side effect. So we should not do anything like this. If one thing means one function is meant to do only that particular logic. Now next, use descriptive names. If you are taking a look at this function, or for example, if you take a function like define handle data, but we are not understanding what to handle. Instead, it's a good practice to do like this: sanitize and store user information. So this is an example of bad. What does this do? We have no idea what this is do, but this is good, clear, and descriptive. Next, so this is an example of if your function name is vague, your function probably is too vague. So that's what we're able to understand from this. Now let's take a look at one level of abstraction per function. Okay. So one level of abstraction for a function means, let's take a look at this example. Here what is happening? Here the problem is this function mixes data cleaning, analysis, or report formatting, all different levels of abstraction. So lots of logic is happening over here, but it's a good example to segregate them into this. So the above function can be written like this. So here, why is this function better? This function is better because it generates reports at a higher level, right? So here, and then abstracting away details. The lower details are encapsulated in their own clearly function. So all these are abstracted into a single function with single responsibility. So it's easier to test, maintain, and read. So in this, we can understand that this function being so here we have clean data, analyze, that's another separate function, a report define report format. That is how we can make use of the meaning called one level of abstraction for function. Now let's take a look at fewer arguments. So if you're taking an example of now here we have a lot of input parameters, but this is going to create a lot of problem in future. But if you can make a class or a model or an object, then it's easier, right? We can directly call this and then user underscore info dot name or dot age. We can all use it like that, and it's also helpful in stricter type checking. Now, next is avoid side effects. So let's say we have an example function called get config. But here again we're setting some values, but our function is meant to get in value. But here we have a side effect where it is setting some user environment. But this is a bad example of writing a function. But if we have something like return config, but that's a good effect. So we should not have any side effects. If this is supposed to be run before getting this function, then we have to call this in a separate function. And the next and the last important point the book tells us is use exceptions, not error codes. So if we are taking an example of we are here trying to divide a by b, but if we're having a zero division, we are returning -1. But that is kind of a bad example. So we should always be able to understand why a -1 or what was the exception thrown. So instead, we have to write functions like this, where if any error comes, you have to raise some exceptions, whether it's a null exception, value exceptions, all that we need to consider. So this is all the most important topics we need to keep in mind while writing functions. I'll push this code into the GitHub so that you can reference it later. And thank you.